think I'm going to start. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to join Charleston, although from a distance, from upstate New York. Warm greetings to you all. I hear some echo. Let's see how we could get rid of it. For some reason, I'm seeing two images of me. I don't know if, Stephan, if it is possible for you to do. It just appeared. It didn't happen when we were testing. I think I'm going to start. Okay, I think the problem is fixed.
I'm not sure now. Oh,
I'll wait.
not quite.
Okay, shall I try again? Oh, I see. Okay, great. I think I'm not hearing the echo any longer, so I'll start with apologies. I was just saying warm greetings from cold upstate New York. It's a bit sunny here, but I wish I were there with you. I'm Rieger, Senior Strategist from Ithaka S+R. Let me share my screen so that we can start our presentation. Well, with this group, I think I don't need to give a definition of the big deal and what's happening in the field. Just to remind us that last few years, many libraries have been active exploring the value proposition of big deals and consider whether they should be unbundling them or they should be canceling them. And responding to kind of this ongoing deliberations, Ithaka S+R this year undertook a project, a collaborative project, to look into how researchers are navigating these changes to journal access. We based our study on 3 research questions, and we were really interested in what's happening to users. How are these cancellations or discussions about cancellations affecting their experiences as users? How is it affecting their perceptions of the library? What are their strategies? So it was a very much user-based study. And we were delighted to have 11 partners to work with us, work with Ithaka S+R. It was a qualitative study in the form of interviews, in-depth interviews with researchers. Each library took on 7 to actual 12 interviews. So therefore, we had a pretty nice corpus of interviews, about 90, in means of analyzing trends, in means of user perceptions or behavior in the face of cancellations or cancellation discussions. And some of you might have seen the report, but I'm just going to highlight 4 key findings. One of them was, by all means, cancellations are leading to loss of efficiency, and it's kind of inconvenient, but it's not being seen as an insurmountable obstacle. Because what happens is faculty members, researchers are, through their academic or social networks, are finding someone who has the article, or they find a version, or sometimes the abstract of the indexed information is sufficient for them. And interestingly, in means of libraries' core value, many researchers still understand and appreciate the library's role as a buyer, as an entity that builds collections, that enables subscription to these journal publications or journal bundles. Researchers have increasing number of expenses associated with their research, whether it's supporting student assistants, postdocs, research labs, expensive equipment, conferences, so on and so forth. So finding funds for APC is definitely complicated. And they don't seem to either understand or really, understand or benefit from institutional APC funds. They are either confused, as I said, or they feel that there is not sufficient fund, or they don't understand the logic. And as we know, they, of course, praise the open access paradigm. and understand the importance of providing open and broad access with no paywalls. But on the other hand, they are really questioning. They are questioning the business models behind these open access models. And they're also very mindful of risks for quality and also concerned about equity issues related to these issues. So today, I'm just delighted to have two colleagues with me, Mihoko Hosoi, Associate Dean for Collections, Research and Scholarly Communications from Pennsylvania State University, and Stephan Kuster, Head of Institutional Relations from Frontiers. And you may know that Frontiers is an open access publisher and open science platform. So what we are going to do is just based on the core findings of the study I just described, we will have a panel discussion. And our discussion is going to look at the findings from the library and publisher perspectives. Of course, Mihoko is a very experienced librarian and I should say senior library leader with collections responsibilities. And Stephan is active in publishing an open access paradigm. So I think it will be really interesting for us to hear how they agree or disagree, or they are on the same page with different issues. So with that brief introduction, I'm going to start our discussion, and I'm going to actually stop sharing so we can easily see everyone. Hello again, Mihoko, and hello again, Stephan. So as I was very briefly going through some core findings, I emphasize that scholars are a bit confused, unclear about long-term vision to transform scholarly communication. They are still perceiving the key library role as building collections, and they are wondering, how these deals that confer new open access privileges will improve the level of library value creation. So, given all these kind of findings, what I would like to ask you is, how can open access publishers help librarians to increase researchers' awareness of these topics, these issues, open access, the value, and the libraries? And Stephan, I'm going to start with you first.
Sure. Thanks. And hello. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Here being my study in Zurich, Switzerland. It's my first time speaking at Charleston, and I'm really sad that I cannot be there in person, and I'll make it a point to be there next time that's possible. Yeah, thanks for that question, Oya. That is an interesting finding. This apparent lack of understanding of the value creation of some of these deals that introduce open access privileges. I've been thinking about where that comes from, and I mean, it partly has to do with the fact that libraries do such a great job for researchers so that they can focus on their work as educators and researchers and do not have to deal with the details of the arrangements that are in place. But I also think that it has to do with an inherent lack of transparency of some of these deals that are in place, including deals that introduce open access privileges, like publish and read deals or so-called transformative agreements. So what open access publishers can do and do is bring this transparency, this radical transparency to the table. Being transparent about the services we offer, about our pricing of those services and the benefits, and sharing our insights on how the services, prices, and benefits compare to toll access models with our library partners. This is what we can do, and together with libraries, we can inform, I don't like the term educate, but we can inform researchers. And it's not only researchers that have this apparent lack of understanding, it's also university administration, university leadership, and funders that play a very important part. We can inform them about open access and about the different pathways to transforming the system to open access, especially of the benefits of unbundling versus hyperbundling. Insisting on transparent packages and deals, even when bundled, and on having all the information available allows for better comparison and more informed decisions for libraries to vote with their dollars and make it easier to explain the value creation in some of these deals to the researchers. but the transparency must include prices paid for total access content and for these so-called transformative agreements, of which we see a lot in Europe, not yet so many in the US. And only then can we compare across models, for example, on something like the total cost of publication. And a visible value creation for the researcher and also for the library is when each time an author publishes with a fully open access publisher, it constitutes a saving for the institution and a smooth process for the author. And that's where we have to get to. In the short term, because of the total cost of publication, but also in the long term, because a better and fully open access option at scale represent more competition, a level playing field, and they decrease the monopolistic or oligopolistic tendencies that we see in the market. But we do need to have those deals in place, and the funds should not be ring-fenced for legacy deals with subscription publishers, but actually allow for these kind of models and deals with fully open access publishers. A more level playing field with more competition also pushes the total access publishers to offer more and more transparent open access deals that are easier to understand to the researchers.
Stephan, Mihoko.
Thank you. Yeah. Hello, everyone. We were very fortunate to be part of this Ithaka study and learn from our peers. And I agree that researchers' awareness needs to be elevated. It's not just the logic, but I also feel that we need to appeal to their emotion and their sometimes self-interest. And as Stephan was mentioning, we need to say a lot more about the benefits of open access. I also think that we need to talk about what librarians do nowadays, including open access promotion. So I've been thinking a lot about our role at the libraries, as well as appealing to researchers' self-interest in a way. But with open access, as Stephen mentioned, they have a lot to gain from this by sharing their research findings. Their research becomes more visible and impactful. Other researchers and practitioners, regardless of their locations and institutional affiliation, can access the research findings. The work gets cited more frequently, and researchers have opportunities to influence public policies. And sometimes it's required that the findings get shared openly. So those things need to be communicated repeatedly in every opportunity that we have. At Penn State, it's sometimes helpful that librarians are faculty members. We have opportunities to go to the research council and the faculty meetings. So it is important for us to keep communicating these benefits. Thank you.
Thanks, Mihoko. And actually, thanks, Mihoko, just for reminding that Penn State participated in our study, and it's really nice to have you for that reason too on this panel. So libraries, as we know, again, libraries have competing priorities and often with many of them limited resources. So it's really a balancing act as they try to serve the needs of the researchers and the learning community, I must say. But in the meanwhile, also try to move open access forward. So given that context, my question is, how can OA publishers work with the libraries to strike the right balance? And this time, I'm going to start with Mihoko.
Thank you very much, Oya. We can definitely continue collaborating. Particularly, I'm thinking subject librarians have opportunity to collaborate more closely with publishers. But let me start with a big picture. So libraries have limited resources, and many of us are under much budgetary pressure right now. So it is difficult to promote open access in this environment. And many libraries have been canceling subscriptions, including big deals. But this can also be an opportunity to talk about advancing research in a sustainable and open manner. And big deal cancellation can be a piece of puzzle, but the money might not directly get shifted to open investment because we have competing needs. So it's complicated. But I think that we need to continue talking about creating and sharing knowledge for the public good, and also serving the needs of the institution, and acknowledge that both are important goals for higher education institutions. At the same time, I think that we need to also realize that for some institutions, promoting open access is more clearly recognized as work directly related to advancing research for the institution. For some other institutions, the focus might be more short-term oriented due to budgetary and structural and other pressures. So one approach might not work with everyone. So we need to recognize that each institution has its own values and principles. So different approaches might be needed depending on the institutions. And sometimes when OA publishers approach libraries or librarians and encourage faculty to contact the library with offers, sometimes it can be difficult because we have competing needs, and there is an increasing number of open access offers, and they all have different models. So faculty members might not understand the complexities involved in all these different offers. So sometimes our discussion with faculty need to be, we need to say a little bit more than just one offer. We need to talk about other opportunities and continue promoting open access in many different ways. But there are certainly many different opportunities to collaborate with OA publishers, particularly in terms of promoting existing opportunities. And we certainly want our researchers to take advantage of the agreements that we have. Thank you.
First, Stephan, what are your thoughts on this issue?
Well, first of all, that's very interesting, Mihoko, and I need to think about that. But I mean, thinking back to the one of the research questions in the study about what happens when researchers lose access because of a cancellation, and it is of course correct that frontiers cannot help directly when researchers lose access, for example, to Elsevier content, simply by by having open access to open access content. That doesn't replace the access that you've lost to toll-paid content. So, of course, libraries have to have this portfolio approach and try to service the different needs of the different communities that they help. But that is in the short term and looking at it at one point in time, where one individual article is not substitutable or replaceable. But my argument would be that in the long run, open access publishers help to exert pressure on legacy publishers and on the subscription model to change that model. And that accelerates the whole system to switch to an open access model. And that mitigates the issues at the system level in terms of researchers' lack of access to content in the mid to long term. One thing that struck me in the report is that it speaks, at one point it speaks of the risks of unintended inequities created by cancellations, when it mentions the example of some researchers have access to alternative ways to securing that access through their networks, through peers, and some researchers don't. And so there's a description of an unintended inequity. But I'm thinking it is not the cancellation that is causing the inequity. It is the underlying inequity of the subscription and transformative big deals model that is the problem here. And also highlighting the inconveniences of a cancellation can be a very effective negotiation strategy, But of course, that argument should cut both ways. So that's also an argument at the disposal of libraries. The inconveniences are not only on one of the parties. But moving open access forward by working together, fully open access publishers, libraries, and other publishers who are also sincere about transforming and transitioning, they can reduce the inconvenience factor on both sides of these models in the long term.
Thank you. Actually, there is a question that maybe we should answer. What is hyperbundling?
Well, hyperbundling is my personal way to describe some of these transformative agreements or publish and read agreements, where on top of the kind of bundling that we know from the traditional big deals, there are new components and new they're actually not new components. It's just that there's new fees to be paid for a read component and a publish component. It's bundling the subscription toll access big deal with an open access deal. So it's basically these hybrid, these mega hybrid deals. That's what I call hyperbundling.
Thanks, Stephan. Well, talking about transformative agreements, certainly the phrase transformative agreements, it's now an established terminology in our vocabularies. We keep on reading about it. And there's an ongoing debate about how transformative agreements are. Are they really transforming the scholarly communication models and business models, or are they merely reconfiguring financially who is paying and which parts of the publishing? So it's definitely an open debate going on. And in our study, it was really, very actually interesting and encouraging to hear from faculty, although the interviewers had to explain what transformative agreements was, but when the concept was explained, they were really very mindful of how is this going to contribute to equity? Are there going to be haves and have-nots? So it's really good that they're also looking at it as a kind of a sociocultural issue, not only a business model. So kind of given this ongoing debate on transformative agreements, my question is are they the right strategy for transforming the scholarly communication system especially to facilitate open access, especially compared to unbundling and canceling big deals? So we are seeing some libraries unbundling, some canceling big deals. And how would you kind of describe the value of transformative agreements vis-a-vis this other set of options, which is, I would say, unbundling or canceling? And Stephan, I'm going to start with you this time.
So I guess people can guess what my answer is, but no, I don't think if they're your only strategy, then I don't think they're the right strategy to drive the transformation forward or to complete the transformation, at least not in any useful time frame, not in our lifetimes. The way to judge whether they are the right strategy is to look at the share of content that has been open and what share remains behind paywalls. And that share in particular is not very high. The share behind is still very high, the share that is behind paywalls. But some of these agreements should therefore not be seen as an alternative to other strategies, but rather as part of a portfolio of strategies. So unbundling, canceling big deals, reallocating funds, having agreements in place with fully open access publishers. These all together should be a not exclusive alternatives, but complementary strategies. Ideally, we should be seeing a combination of all of these options in the portfolio of strategies. Institutional or consortia-wide agreements with fully open access publishers become possible when funds can be reallocated. And so more than cancellations, what is needed is to free ring-fenced budgets tied up into a specific business model, so budgets that are dedicated to subscription for historical reasons, and allow those budgets to be used to pay for publications and publishing regardless of the business model. And in that way, they can be used to, they can be directed where valuable services are being offered transparently, and they help guarantee author choice regardless of the business model. The option of cancellations paired with the availability of attractive alternative agreements with open access publishers are perhaps the best way to ensure the transformation rather than focusing on one model alone on these transformative agreements. And it's also a good way to put pressure on these agreements to be truly transformative and avoid being avoid delaying the transformation. So far, some of these agreements still have to prove their transformative power. There is, despite the fact that we have some of these agreements are now 5-6 years old, the amount of transformed content is still very, very little. Not to speak of, we haven't seen signs of any major publisher completely flipping their business model. So I think it's a combination of these strategies that will drive open access forward.
Thank you, Stephan. So Mihoko, it will be now your turn to tell us how you compare the value proposition, potential of getting into transformative agreements versus unbundling or canceling.
I believe that we need to do both, partly because we don't have any wiggle room in our budget. Canceling big deals might have been needed regardless of our open access approaches. But anyway, but let's start with a transformative OA approach. I feel like we need to really carefully consider so-called transformative deals to make sure that they are truly transformative. So if, for example, if only a portion of the deal is open, or if there is no clear pathway to reaching 100% OA, then that doesn't sound like a transformative agreement. Additionally, if it's a partial open access, then it can create equity issues and user service challenges for librarians. It's difficult for librarians to have to say to some users, sorry, we've spent up our tokens and I'm afraid you have to pay for APCs for yourself should you wish to publish OA. Or this kind of conversation is really challenging. You know, for example, if we have to say, oh, sorry, only hybrid OA is covered in this contract, no gold OA, or so forth. So it makes libraries look bad if we have to say these things. So, and we librarians are ones that have to deal with complaints from end users. So we have to think about these operational issues in addition to our budgets, the quality of the content, the researchers' needs, and payment workflows. And we are in general looking for deals that are neutral as for library spending. And also libraries need to develop criteria for evaluating these kinds of offers. And Sky Communications and subject librarians need to collaborate because they have the necessary expertise and have access to different relationships and networks. And I was just thinking about the University of California Libraries review team. They're known as the STAR team. They are the Scholarly Transformation Advice and Review team. As you know, I used to work at the UC system, and I found this kind of review team to be very helpful. They had certain criteria such as observing organizational principles, potential for transformation, community endorsement, long-term affordability, operational integrity, transparency, and financial risk, and so forth. And I think all of us need to think about this at the libraries in evaluating these offers. And of course, it's harder to do this independently. And also consortia usually involve institutional members with different principles. So it's not easy, and it takes time to evaluate different models and reach consensus among these different members. But easy way, regardless of our approaches, either way, we'll want to make progress in the right way, considering sustainability, equity, transformative potential, and other criteria that are important for the institution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mihoko. Actually, I think we have 10 minutes left. I had another question, but I'm really tempted to just open it up for questions and comments. And I know that one question we received is one of the participants asks, "What is are read and publish and read? Are they really different?" Just for those of you who kind of need a very quick explanation, transformative agreements, they come in different flavors. So far, we are hearing read and publish and read. And just a very, in a nutshell, sometimes the focus is on ensuring that publications from an institution entering in transformative agreement is open access, that become open access researchers' papers. The other one is more focusing on covering the APC costs. So this is really very quick in a nutshell. But I'm going to actually ask Stephan, as a publisher, you're welcome to give a better and more kind of precise definition to differentiate them. But do you see, what is the difference, or do you have any kind of opinions about the real difference between that?
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't have one. We are one of the publishers that don't offer these deals. We are an open access publisher, therefore all of our agreements are fully open, and that's it. And actually, we struggle ourselves with some of this terminology. I think there was a session yesterday where 6 different types of transformative agreements were described. And this in itself adds to the transparency issue that I was mentioning in the beginning. How do you expect researchers to understand this landscape, let alone people who are outside of academia make sense of this, if you have 6 different terms for something that it used to be called hybrid? I think the best term is still big deal. It's big deals with different labels. Now that's the easy answer. The difficult answer, and actually trying to make distinctions between these deals, because there are distinctions. I'm afraid I'm not up to that. I'm not caught up with the latest terminology. I think the explanation you gave makes sense to me, and it's the one I've seen also in the literature.
And actually, I'm so glad to see that on the chat, and we should make it available to all the audience members. In Scholarly Kitchen, Lisa Hinchcliffe authored a piece on transformative agreements. I think that became a very, very useful resource. So, Stephanie, if you could cut and paste that for everyone to see, that would be great. Let's see, are there any comments or questions from the audience? I know that we also have a physical room there. I envy that you can all get together. It's wonderful. I hope it will be possible for us next year. Or Stephan, I'm going to start with you to see if you have any comments before I chime in.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can answer the question as the person who asked it, Heather, I think it was. I'm not sure I'm able to give the best answer here, but just to be clear, there are transformative agreements that are truly transformative. So I may have come across a bit cynically before, but there are publishers and journals that are sincere. We see many smaller society publishers and society journals that are sincere about the transformation, that do face very significant challenges to do that. But that make a real effort and actually have made the plunge, taken the plunge and flipped their business model. And most of them come out all right. I think, as you say, it's particularly relevant in areas where there is not a huge offer of open access alternatives and titles, that this is the case. And I think that's the answer I can give. I haven't looked at more specific data.
I think, Heather, that's an excellent question. The question was, I know there was a bit of echo, but just to repeat, one aspect of Heather's question was disciplinary variations, and if different cultures, disciplinary cultures, have the potential to benefit from the transformative agreements at the same level. Think about the humanities and social sciences and sciences. I don't want to make any generalization, but still, the journals predominantly continue to represent more sciences and then social sciences and maybe humanities. And especially humanities still continue to be a discipline where monograph is very important. And I could also say that for qualitative social sciences. So I kind of find it difficult to compare too, just because there are variations in scholar communication culture. But I must add that these large packages from publishers, they not only include scientific journals, but also journals in social sciences and in some humanities. Although I'm afraid, science dwarfs the other disciplines in means of reliance on science communication via journal articles.
It's an interesting question. I'm sorry, Oya, I interrupted you. So I don't have a solid data, but the question was about the potential. So it's interesting that when I go to faculty meeting, when I talk about open access, I see humanities faculty nodding and even suggesting, how about you cancel these journals, STEM journals, so that you have more money to work on it. So, and when I go to medical school or STEM related meetings, then, so this is just anecdotal and just my observation. I feel that they are more practical about what they need and they get access to those content. So, but potential, it's an interesting question. It's something for us to consider in the future. I don't have data at the moment. Thank you.
Yes, Mihoko. Well, time flies. It's almost 3:10. So I want to thank you all for joining this session. And I'm grateful for Mihoko and Stephan to be with me in this panel discussion, and Mihoko also for being a part of Ithaka S+R study. And I'm just wishing you a productive and enjoyable conference, and until we see each other again. Stay well.
Thank you, Oya. Thank you for moderating.
Thank you.